This should be a really quick lecture about a particular part of the quadratic formula that'll help us determine how many solutions any particular quadratic function might have. When we're talking about a quadratic function, and you can see this more if we graph them, we're not going to right yet, but if you could either have two solutions, one solution, or no solution. And it's really easy to determine that because we're already doing the math that would tell us that answer. Here's our quadratic formula up here. X is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If we look at just one part of it, if we look at what's called the discriminant, and it's this part here, the part that's under the radical sign, just the number, not the radical sign itself, just b squared minus 4ac. If we do that calculation, that number that results is called the discriminant. And what that will allow us to determine is how many real number solutions a quadratic has, whether it's 2, whether it's 1, or whether it's 0. And it's really easy to make this determination. All we do is we take and we figure out, and we always want to start with, and don't ask me why that A was written in green, but everything else came out as blue. We always want to start with our values, A, B, and C, from the quadratic, or from the trinomial. And we're just going to plug them into that b squared minus 4ac and figure out what we get. If, when we plug in the values to b squared minus 4ac, if it's positive, if it's greater than 0, there will be two solutions. If it's positive, that means you can find the square root and you have something to add or subtract to the opposite of b in the numerator. When b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, when it's positive, there'll be two solutions. When it's equal to 0, it's one solution. If nothing comes out of this part of the quadratic formula, nothing comes out of b squared minus 4ac, then we have just one thing that we're going to divide by 2a. And then lastly, if it is negative, there will be no solutions. Basically what happens here, if this turns out to be negative, if b squared minus 4ac winds up being negative, you're going to attempt to find the square root of a negative number, which we're not going to cover in this class, certainly not in June. But we'll save it for a future class when you do determine that. So how we would do it, we've used this quadratic function before, x squared minus 8x plus 10. So just to find the discriminant right here is we're going to take b squared, so negative 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 10. We don't find the square root, we just find this number, and that becomes 64. Negative 8 squared is 64, minus 4 times 1 times 10, and we already knew this. It's 24. What the number is not important as is it positive or is it negative. And since it's positive, we know there's two solutions, and we already found out earlier what they are. But when you are asked to find out how many solutions a quadratic function has, use the discriminant. Take the three values, a, b, and c, and just do what's under the radical sign, b squared minus 4ac. If it's positive, there's two solutions. If it's equal to 0, there's one solution. And if it's negative, there will be no real number solutions. Later on in your math career, you'll figure out how to deal with that. But for now, 2 or 1 is all we'll be dealing with. That's going to be part of the practice that you're going to have later on. I don't think this is too tricky an idea, but please let me know if you have any questions. I hope this helped. helped.